No Game, No Life. Volume 7, Chapter 1, Part 7. Closed Circle. Inverted form. Shiro, I promise you, I won't run from reality anymore. Yeah. Brother, I agree. I won't run anymore. Thanks to Steph's valiant efforts, the sinking siblings had been narrowly salvaged. Embracing their cheeks wet with tears, they swore solemnly that they would face reality together. They would learn to swim. Well, Sora, what sort of braggadocio are you going to trot out now to explain away your error? Drenched and panting, Steph rose shouting, despite abject exhaustion. She'd hauled up not only the drowning Sora and Shiro, but their luggage, which had settled at the bottom of the lake. The astonishing lung capacity and inexhaustible energy reserves that enabled her to scream after all that demanded respect. If only respect could replenish one's energy. Just this. Exactly as I planned. You're wheezing and sputtering up water like a fountain, shivering with your sister and sobbing. Exactly as I planned? Was your plan to turn yourself into an artificial reef to decorate the bottom of the lake? You certainly love nature, don't you? Apparently serious this time, Steph's rebuke was several times keener than usual. But Sora grinned and spewed water from his upturned face, jeering. Why would we build a reef in a freshwater lake? If we were trying to conserve nature, we'd build it in the... Wham! Steph thrust her finger at Sora, who considered the aforementioned atrocity. He lay supine, Shiro on top of him, as Steph wailed. Though everything had sunk in the lake, their luggage, their backpacks, had been saved by Steph. The contents were likely more or less okay. The backpacks were waxed in anticipation of such events. Moreover, Sora and Shiro's phones and tablet were all water resistant for use in the tub. And now, having fulfilled the task, each had an additional die floating before their chest. This was what Steph called an atrocity. So where was the problem? Aren't we killing each other? How can you talk about this going exactly as planned? Steph's annoyed and reproachful tone made Sora realize he was a bit slow on the uptake. He'd only said they weren't killing each other, yet both Eno and Plum had nearly done them in. That was surely the atrocity to which she was referring. I don't know how to explain how I talk. You do it with your mouth. Sora got to his feet, muttering, and faced Steph's glare with his usual nonchalance. Maybe I'll cough up water, maybe fish, but I'll still talk just the same. It went exactly as planned. Steph glared at Sora stone-faced, but he just continued casually wringing out his shirt. The premise that we all agreed to start this game doesn't make sense. Yes, it was an unsound premise. For them to trust one another, not to betray one another, killing each other, bargaining with the Shrine Maiden's life. There were so many conditions, it was implausible they could agree on. One more. Sora put his wrung-out shirt back on and gave a thin smile. A game with old Deus. Shiro and I would be in on that without question. Jaburo would obey I guess she'd play out of curiosity. If the Shrine Maiden was in, then Eno and Izuna would be too. And you, Steph, you might just, get dragged into it. And what about Plum? Steph could hardly get the words out. The premise was implausible, but the game could only have been initiated by agreement under plausible premises. Even so, Plum had no reason, no motive, no duty to join. The one whose survival is most questionable in this game isn't us. It's Plum. Look around. It's an open sky environment with plains as far as the eye can see. The gameplay extended, and this is someone for whom exposure to sunlight is lethal. There's no blood. Heck, he doesn't even have access to bodily fluids. With virtually no chance of finishing, there was no reason for Plum to join. What is he after? What condition would convince him to play? It's simple, right, Shiro? They'd each wrung out and dried their clothes as best they could. Sora pointed to Plum's dice by their chest, of which they'd each gained one thanks to the task anyone could fulfill. Shiro, seemingly finally caught up with her brother's reasoning, happily answered. Plum wants to win, without finishing. Playing with the dice they'd taken, no, that Plum had given them, humanity's greatest gamers, blank, boldly and brashly declared through thin smiles. If you've forgotten, we'll tell you as many times as it takes. Blank doesn't lose. Everything was precisely as predicted, exactly as planned. What they did was win, as a matter of destiny. Yes. Yes, that's right, isn't it? In that case. Steph mumbled, her expression no longer troubled. She beamed with relief, as if having suddenly remembered something she'd forgotten. Then she pointed at Sora and Shiro. No, behind them. Beyond them. I would love to hear what's next, including what I should do for underwear while you're at it. Please elucidate your plan, O wise king and queen, pride of Elkia. Describe how the plot will unfold so my heart does not break. She remained dead behind the eyes as she smiled hollowly, but she had also drawn the siblings' attention to something. The scenery had been temporarily changed by the task, and on top of that, they had been transported into the air. Now the horse they'd been using, along with the carriage, must have either run off or disappeared, for they were nowhere to be seen. Here they were in a world without roads, with no choice but to walk as the horizon still fanned out afar. Hosed, frozen, and wordless, both Sora's and Shiro's cheeks glistened, with a single silent tear. WTF? This was the first move. They'd gone through all that, felt themselves at death's doorstep, just to stand on the 60-second space. They'd have to roll the dice many more times and ensure much more to reach their goal 289 spaces ahead. This was 1/6 of the way. Still the opening, for God's sake. To be honest, Sora cursed the Sora in his absent memory who'd agree to these rules. Couldn't he have done any better? The mode of transport, at least? A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Come, give me your dice again, and we shall go forth as one. Sora howled as to lift his spirits, which were at their breaking point. They would travel in company just as they had in the first move. Leaving Shiro and Steph each one die, Sora gathered the rest. 04. Travel in company must first be declared, whereupon the company be advanced according to the role of one representative. 05. A company of more than 2 shall, of the dice used, lose a number of dice equal to the number of members of the company multiplied by the number of followers in it. Traveling in company required they use 6 dice in one move, but there was no helping that. The trade-off was the dice they could roll increased, allowing them to go farther and land on fewer tasks. As Sora held out his hand, Steph took 8 of the dice floating by her chest and handed over. Well, she intended to hand them over, but something came over her. She lowered her face. It may be late to ask, but why are you bringing me? Say, what? Sorry. Frankly, I underestimated you. We've never even seen this game before, and you want us to go for it with the weakest characters alone and no leveling? Damn! You are a professional masochist. Brother, the uploader always just makes an ass of himself in those videos. Your meaning is quite lost on me. I mean... Steph, having been forced to accompany them by what amounted to a threat in the first move, now frowned doubtfully. Considering the company rules, you'd be much better off leaving me, wouldn't you? Why had they forced her to accompany them? Thor and Shiro looked at each other as she mumbled uncomfortably, apparently finally coming to realization. Sure is late to ask. They smiled at each other in mutual pity of the girl. At the beginning, they'd swiped 9 dice from Steph that they'd used to threaten her. If they went in company, though, they'd each expend 2 dice for every move for a total of 6. On top of that, if they failed to fulfill a task, they each lost another. In the worst case, they could be wiped out in one go. Even if they were able to travel farther with more dice, they'd use up more. It was a net loss. Whereas, if you two went alone, you'd only have to use 2 dice to move, wouldn't you? Indeed, the rule said a company of more than 2 would use up more dice. More than 2. More than. Not 2 or more. That didn't include 2. If it was just Thor and Shiro, they'd only have to spend 1 die each, 2 total. Adding just 1 more person instantly tripled their consumption. So Shiro and I have to travel together, but there's no point in anyone else using these rules. And Shiro and me aside, having 1 more person or a company immediately weighs on us. It's an impediment to winning, so we should go without you, is what you're saying? Yes. Steph, flustered, heard the voice of the someone who'd taken 9 dice from Shiro and 8 from her to hold 27. Well, hate to break it to you, but you're wrong. Pity, huh? It was a sharp baritone booming with laughter, the voice of a man in his late 40s. We can rest assured that the one who added these company rules was me, which means the company rules were totally meaningless for everyone except Sora and Shiro. Given that there was a traitor, there was no advantage for 2 to travel together, and traveling with more than 2 was just shooting yourself in the foot. There was no reason for anyone to use these rules. But if these rules, which Sora must have added because they were essential for Shiro and himself, were so confident as to keep the 2 of them together without penalty, they must have been somehow convenient in this regard too, huh, God? The way I see it, we have to travel in company to win, so declare it. He looked toward the so-called finish, far beyond the vast board, and chortled mockingly as if trolling the old deus who waited there. Having demonstrated multiple times already, that a mere human could take down a god, his words, his face, and voice, as if aged by years to come, made Shiro and Steph blush unconsciously. As he'd urged them, they took Sora's hands and declared, "Travel in company." As these words echoed, Sora plucked the dice of life from his chest and flicked them into the open space. They rolled over the ground, and once the numbers were displayed, the three of them were able to move forward accordingly, at the cost of their lives, 20%. Abandoning the time they'd existed, their ages, their lives, to advance. What awaited them at their destination? Sora and Shiro sneered. Steph quaked. Together, they looked ahead to wherever their lives had rolled them. "30 minutes passed looking. I did ask this on the first move as well, but what are you doing? I think I answered you on the first move too. This is a ritual. Random number analysis." The tension had long since departed. Steph, age 1.8, sat holding her knees before putting her question to and immediately shot down by Sora and Shiro. It was a strange scene. Two little girls and a shirtless version loser shut-in gamer around age 50 doing a handstand. One brush with the police would be enough to get him arrested and indicted on the stench of criminality and circumstantial evidence alone. Rest assured, he would be found guilty. "Brother, for the next one. Torch, crouch, move left and right. Then throw it." I would appreciate it if you could explain in a little more detail, Though for a moment he looked like quite the slick older gentleman, when you looked at him now, it reeked of sad. It was just Sora. Only I would prescribe those task-disabling and travel and company rules. I told you, I must have set them up. And just as he had 30 minutes earlier, Sora threw a lone die. 02. The die bearer might advance a number of spaces equal to the result of a roll of all the dice he beareth. 03. The result of the roll of the dice shall be determined randomly, whereafter one of the dice used shall be lost. It was probably us who specified these dice rules, too. "Brother, for the next one, take a step back and throw from the bridge position." As Shiro instructed, her brother got in the bridge position and launched another die, clearly uncomfortable, but answering Steph's questions nonetheless. Not with words, but with action. Still in the bridge position, he rolled the 20 dice he'd been walking around with. And they all came up sixes. With a little technique, anyone can manipulate a roll. At least this much. Like hell they could. Shiro felt as though she'd heard Steph's inner voice, but in fact, anyone could do it. Look at Izuna's and Ino's preternatural senses, or Jabril and Plum's magic. It was unclear who'd first said it should be prohibited, but the older brother continued. But if we prohibit role manipulation and trust that old Deus with some fuzzy bullshit like randomness, she could very well rig the dice so no one could finish. That's a trick you can't prove. We'd be doomed. You think I'd overlook that? "Brother, for the next one, press yourself down on the ground." As instructed, Sora dug his face into the ground and launched another die. Given that, someone must have specified a random number generator. He turned his gaze to Shiro to emphasize. Someone here. Still staring at the number that dizzyingly appeared and disappeared on the rolled die, Shiro answered with a smug expression and a V for victory. If it were prohibited even for the old days to manipulate the roll, then they would have to specify a pseudo-random number sequence, a randomization function. If memory loss were conditioned to start, this would ensure that no one could game the randomization. But if Shiro delineated it, she definitely incorporated some sort of condition. I've made it so if we figure out the seed, we can make the random numbers the ones we want. Here's the proof this was our doing. The older brother smiled devilishly. You have to roll all your dice, but it doesn't say you have to roll them all at the same time, does it? In which case, if they rolled them one at a time while changing the conditions, they could figure it out. Well, it's not news to me, but you are disgustingly reliable frauds, both of you. All right, brother. Now take off your pants and take a step back. Shiro, I gotta ask, would you really seed an RNG based on whether or not I was wearing clothes? Shiro answered her brother's sarcastic quip internally. Of course not. Shiro would have used the routine for Romancing Saga 3 with its marked quirks, in which case the seeds would have been the number of steps and elapsed time, which she could remember perfectly, but... Sure, that's how I roll. What are you saying? What am I supposed to do if I get buck naked for the sake of the numbers? Get buck naked. A middle-aged man in his birthday suit with 2 little girls? Isn't that totally asking for the cops? It's probably already too late, Shira thought. Steph seemed to have given up and was gazing at the blue sky, whistling through some grass she'd picked, the flat sound reverberating alone. I finally finished this eternal chapter. It's finally over. I did it. It's done. It's good. I enjoyed this. But man, what? I gotta check. How much of the stinking book percentage am I at? 49%. 49% of the book. I know there was a long prologue, but my goodness, this is stinking nuts. I mean, I guess technically... Oh, no, it's still 49. I can't believe I'm done with it. By the way, there are a ton of game references, and all of the games they have referenced are actually real, and I've looked some of them up. Like, I just looked up Romancing Saga. It's stinking 90s stinking PC game. Like, I mean, it makes sense considering that old games relied on RNG like that. It's really interesting because they've been some... What was it? There was like a bunch of stinking games. Final Fantasy. The Floating Isles was from like that one. Was it a GameCube game? It was also part of the DS. I can't think of what it is. No, not Delta Quest. It's a book series. Anyways, I'm gonna get off this rant for a bit. This is interesting. I'm curious where it's going. I'm getting into the game though. It's interesting, and I really want to see where else this is going. Wow, that wasn't completely redundant, what I just said. Sorry for just ranting on like this. But I've been holding this in for, what is it, 2 months now? I mean, part 7? For a month. Probably about 2 months. That's probably about right. Maybe exactly at 2 months, because a month isn't actually 4 weeks. I'm gonna shut up. Anyways, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, thanks for getting here through this super long chapter with me. The next chapter is coming out. I'm adding a break between weeks because that's what I said I was going to do. I want to be consistent with that. And I also really need to catch up with these episodes. I'm only recording this like a little bit before this goes up. I say the next chapter is going to be a whodunit chapter. Chapter 2, whodunit overthinking. And I kind of want to see where that goes. Why is the Shrine Maiden dead? We still don't know that. Why is Eno being a stinking butthole? And more of an idiot than usual? Question mark. Not sure he is, but I'm gonna pretend like he is. I'm just surprised. I'm surprised. Stinking. Who was it? Man, I'm so bad at names. Jabril. I'm just surprised that Jabril hasn't teamed up with them, considering their relation right now. But honestly, if there is a traitor, I wouldn't be too surprised if she was it. I mean, she would make the most sense. I'm gonna leave you off there. There's like a stinking 20-second pause that I'm gonna delete between me looking up the name because I can remember it. I suppose I'll see you guys next time. Bye.